All right, folks, Monday, and I got to tell you, there's a lot going on. Now, we are not a news program. Obviously, we're opinion, we're coffee table, we're water cooler discussions, mostly opinion, but we obviously base everything we talk about in truth. It's truth. The truth is at the heart of this show. We have a truth bomb that happens on every show, and everything we do is all about truth, transparency, being honest and truthful. And I'm just going to say this. There's so much news. I hate to open the show with news because, we tape this early afternoon every day, and this is Monday afternoon, we're taping it, and things tend to change, but I had to bring it up because this is huge. This is massive. A Manhattan jury completely clears Daniel Penny of all criminal wrongdoing in the chokehold death of Jordan Neely on that crowded subway in New York. That incident, caught on video, sparked a huge and fierce debate. The panelists acquitted Penny of criminally negligent homicide, which could have put him behind bars for up to 4 years, but also additional time. They could have added. They had other charges that they were going for, and that Neely chokehold death aboard that train in May of 2023, about a year and a half ago. Manslaughter, the top charge against Penny, was tossed on Friday after the jurors twice said they couldn't reach a unanimous verdict. That could have been additional years. This is a massive win for so many things. Now, let's just hold it right here. Let's just talk about this for 1 second. It's a massive win. Yes, it won. But can I just be honest right now? Daniel Penny is a free man today because Donald Trump won the election. Allow me to explain. The lawfare that the left was using against Donald Trump in New York, Alvin Bragg, in New York, Letitia James, Fani Willis in Georgia, Jack Smith on national level, that was all lawfare thrown at Trump to make sure he wasn't the president. When it didn't work, all those lawsuits went away. They all went poof. They're either gone or in the process of being gone, with the exception of that nut job lunatic who accused Trump of sexually assaulting her, 40, 50 years ago? That one didn't go away. Trump's got to pay some money, but it's literally a gnat on Trump's ass right now. Daniel Penny is free because Donald Trump won the election, and these jerk D-bag litigators realize that they can't do this kind of crap. They can't selectively put people in jeopardy, in harm's way with the court system, with the legal system, just because they don't like their politics. This is what happened. Donald Trump was being persecuted and prosecuted, not because he was breaking any laws, because they didn't like his politics. Daniel Penny, the same guy, Alvin Bragg in New York, the same guy who reduced charges for felony offenses down to misdemeanors, did the same thing with Trump. He put a misdemeanor, trumped it up to a felony charge. He did the same thing, went after Daniel Penny for things that happen on that freaking subway every goddamn week. People die in that subway every week. There are fights on that subway every week. Mortalities every single week on that subway system in New York. And Daniel Penny, they're trying to make an example out of him because why? Well, he was a Marine. He was a military guy. He probably loved his country. He was a conservative, and the conservative media backed him. So it's not a massive win for Penny, but a massive win for humanity, for American society. And it restores our faith, even so slightly much, our faith in the justice system. It'll help, at least. This is the story of a man who came to the defense of frightened passengers, women, and children who were being threatened by violence by a criminal, a drug user, abuser, who had a history of dangerous and erratic behavior. We've talked about it here. We've talked about it last week. We've talked about it over the year and a half. But the fact that a man who acted on behalf of others in this way should have been applauded. But instead, the criminal became the victim in New York with Alvin Bragg, how it always does. And the hero was turned into the villain. All right, folks, welcome back. By the way, there's some other stuff going on. We're going to get to all this stuff. We're going to get to Syria and what happened in Syria, why that is so important. And I believe all these things are happening, including Syria, because Donald Trump is about to take over. He's 40 days or so from taking over the White House. And I think a lot of these international thugs, dictators, terrorists, Iranian mullahs, they're all negotiating their position before Trump becomes the president of the world, literally the world. Welcome back. Happy Monday, as I said. Did old Joe and Dr. Jill completely snub Kamala and Doug Emhoff last night? Take a look at this clip, and then I'll break down exactly why you can clearly see that these people all despise each other. Look at this. There were no hugs. There were no handshakes. There was no real eye contact between the Bidens and their lousy VP. There's plenty to say about this, so let's react. So old Joe Biden and his failed sidekick, commie Kamala Harris, made one of their final high-profile appearances together last night at the annual Kennedy Center Honors. Now, even though they delivered nothing but failure for the American people and their party and the country, the pair, of course they did. It's D.C., the Kennedy Center is all liberals. The pair received a standing ovation before taking their seats at the event. What were they applauding? We saw the usual from old Joe. He was completely clueless, didn't know when to clap, didn't know where he was, really. He had an unwarranted look of pride on his face. Like, what are you proud about, Joe? You're getting applause? For what? What'd you do? Whew. Despite the fact that he and his co-pilot are almost unanimously known as international embarrassments, the crowd erupted for Kamala Harris, who's a more rare sight than a solar eclipse these days. Maybe they were just so happy to see that she was live. I know. They were just happy to see if she was sober. And maybe she was. The failed presidential candidate smiled and waved from the red velvet box in that Kennedy Center's Opera House, but notably did not interact with her boss. This moment was hard to miss. Joe and Jill Biden visibly ignored Kamala and her that beta husband thing that she's got with her. It was clear as day. Joe may not know where he is these days, but apparently he's sharp enough to remember Kamala Harris forced him off the ticket and then lost the election by a landslide. Just look at their miserable dynamic. The night was filled with performances and speeches, yet the Bidens, the cold shoulder, well, that stole the show. That's what everyone watched. They saw that difference between Joe Biden and the first lady and the second gentleman. It was just awful. Well, now we have a visual to support everything we've heard about the animosity in the White House. Kamala Harris has spent the past month hiding at the bottom of the bottle, so to speak. Now, old Joe has been all over the place, basically Venmoing our adversaries, I should say, stacks of taxpayer dollars, your money, while he learns about the animals of the jungle in Africa. These two partners have no desire to share the same space any longer. It's pretty clear that even they are looking forward to January 20th, 2025, Inauguration Day. Just look at this now. Meanwhile, this is in Paris. Fast forward to Paris. Trump, the opening of the Notre Dame Cathedral. Now look at Dr. Jill, how she stared at Donald Trump in the Notre Dame Cathedral. She's staring at Donald Trump. Looks at him, I don't know, with love and hope. Maybe the same way she used to look at old Joe before she helped end his political career. Of course, Trump was there representing American leadership. Jill's husband, the freaking president of the United States, he declined to attend. Jill was absolutely thrilled to be in the presence of a real leader. You can see it on her face. Maybe that's what it's all about. She just wants to be married to the president. Maybe that's it. Maybe she'll go and bounce Melania and jump in there. Trump wanted no part of it. Trump had a busy weekend, though, as he usually does. The soon-to-be president kept it real during a Meet the Press sit-down. He walked us through his early discussions with foreign counterparts and explained why tariffs are not the disaster that the mainstream media wants you to believe. Listen.
Are you actually going to impose these tariffs, or are they a negotiating tactic?
Well, I'll give you an example. With Canada, and in particular Mexico, we have millions of people pouring into our country. You agree with that. I spoke with both. I spoke with Justin Trudeau. In fact, he flew to Mar-a-Lago within about 15 seconds after the call ended. Yeah. He was at Mar-a-Lago. We were having dinner talking about it. I said, you have to close up your borders because they're coming in the northern border too a lot. Not like the southern border, but they're coming in the Canadian border a lot. We can't have open borders. And I said to the president of Mexico and to Justin Trudeau, if it doesn't stop, I'm going to put tariffs on your country at about 25%.
So no question there, right? No question. International relations involve cooperation. We all know about the drug epidemic stemming from our open borders, specifically the southern border. We also know that Trump is going to close those borders up one way or the other. He promised to. He keeps his promises. If these other leaders don't cooperate, what's Trump supposed to do? Well, he's going to lay down and let America suffer like Joe Biden did? Of course not. He's not going to do that. Of course, he's going to threaten his counterparts with tariffs. Anyone who bitches and moans and complains about it simply has no clue what those tariffs can accomplish. Personally, I just got to let you know, I don't love the idea of tariffs unless it does something like this. I don't like punitive tariffs. I like a free market. I like the market to supersede politics. In this case, Trump is demanding his borders closed, and he's going to use tariffs to do it. God bless you. I'm behind that, too. Would preferably see it done the other way. I'd just like us to build it ourselves. Anyway, Trump wants them to pay for it, and that's the way you can get Mexico and Canada to pay for it. In case you need a reminder, here's what Trump got done with tariffs during his first term as president.
To do with other things, tariffs. I have stopped wars with tariffs by saying, you guys want to fight, it's great, but both of you are going to pay tariffs to the United States at 100%. And they have many purposes, tariffs, if properly used. I don't say you use them like a madman. I say properly used.
No, so that's right, you whiny ass liberals. The man stopped the wars with tariffs. So to all of you ignorant Democrats wearing yellow Save Ukraine bracelets and pins, I would advise that you research that definition and the impact of tariffs before taking to social media to complain about him, in case you need to be reminded about why this man won by such an undeniable margin. Listen to Trump's simple goals for America and ask yourself why anyone who lives here would even vote against this.
I'm really looking to make our country successful. I'm not looking to go back into the past. I'm looking to make our country successful. Retribution will be through success. If we can make this country successful, that would be my greatest. That would be such a great achievement. Bring it back. I'm looking to make our country great. I'm looking to bring prices down because, I won on two things: the border. And more than immigration, they like to say immigration. I break it down more to the border, but I won on the border and I won on groceries. It's a very simple word, groceries.
No, it really is. It's literally that simple. Before I wrap it up, I'm sure you heard Biden is giving more of our taxpayer dollars, more money now to Syria. He gave it to Angola, Africa last week. Can you believe this guy? Can he just freaking go home? Pack it up, Joe. Pack the White House up. Get the hell out. Stop spending our money. We're going to break this down a little bit later, the stupidity in the show, but I wanted you to check back in and take a listen. The hurricane devastation remains unaddressed, and people are now freezing cold, sleeping on their front lawns. Here's the latest from an American state that Biden could give two shits about.
Continues to be a major concern as they continue rebuilding walls, trying to stay warm. And the Western Carolina Emergency Network tells me they need kerosene for heaters and gas for generators, but donations are slim. So they're trying to get the word out that people in North Carolina still need a lot of help. Now, besides the physical, there's also the mental. A lot of volunteers telling me that preparing for bad conditions is a sort of PTSD for Helene survivors as well. And we're expecting at most up to a foot of snow in some of the mountainous areas.
Does that piss you off as much as it does me? Can you imagine sending pallets of cash to Africa last week, promised it to Syria yesterday, hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine, basically anywhere, anyone that sticks their hands out and asks for it outside the 50 freaking United States, while people in North Carolina are living like that. They're sleeping on the freaking ground outside of their destroyed homes as they brace for a foot of snow. And Biden says, Africa, here's $1 billion. He says, Syria, we're sending you humanitarian aid. He sent humanitarian aid to Gaza. And there are people, Americans, sleeping on their front lawns in North Carolina. If anyone wonders why the Democrats lost this country, look no further than this ravaged state. They abandoned the people who put them in charge. And by the way, let's stop here for a second. Can we just stop here for a second? These people are sleeping on their front lawns, and we're sending billions of dollars around the world. Okay, and what happened to FEMA? What happened when the FEMA administrator was pushed? She said, yes, it's true. We bypassed the homes that had Trump signs on them. You wonder why they lost resoundingly across the board. You wonder why there was a mandate, a national mandate for Trump to go clean the shit up, drain the freaking swamp. They got exactly what they asked for. All right, speaking of North Carolina, the great people, Bobby Nominee, the great people at Goya sent truckloads of food to help the people in North Carolina. Goya is just an amazing company, and Bob is just a wonderful guy. In 2021, Goya launched Goya Cares, a global initiative to protect children and educate the children on mental health. Goya Cares is providing schools and community centers with a preventative education curriculum and a free assembly that includes the viewing of the Goya Cares Press Pause. Press Pause, by the way, is intended to raise awareness regarding mental health issues, abuse, and bullying among children and teens in our communities. Press Pause is an educational film following 15-year-old Sofia Rodriguez as she navigates adolescence, self-doubt, and an abusive relationship amid her parents' turbulent divorce, set within the cultural context of her Hispanic family. The film explores her discomfort with unwanted attention from her uncle and the pressures of maintaining a facade of perfection in high school. It introduces the Press Pause campaign, promoting kindness and advocacy, highlighted by Sophia leaving a note saying, quote, "You matter," for a bullied peer. The film encourages open family communication about mental health and culminates in Sophia's transformative realization of her right to seek help through the power of empathy and small acts of kindness. Press Pause displays the importance of being proactive in supporting one's community and underscores the critical importance of self-advocacy. All right, folks, time for today's Truth Bomb. All right, so like I said, Syria fell at the top of the show. Syria fell over the weekend. Bashar al-Assad he's gone through tunnels in his palace and ended up, he's in Russia right now with $38 million worth of apartments, and he took with him £1 billion, British pounds, which translate to about $1.3 billion US. He brought that money over to Russia. He's hiding out in Russia, and the reason why this matters, the reason why we're even talking about this, number one, and we're going to get deeper into it in the monologue after this. But number one, Barack Obama started this mess. Barack Obama put a red line saying if Bashar al-Assad uses chemical weapons on his own people, it's a red line for Barack Obama. We're going to go in and take him out. Happened. Proof happened. We found out he was using chemical weapons on his own people, and Obama kept his mouth shut. He told the world he is a feckless leader, Obama. Fast forward to Biden. Biden's been giving these people a pass straight through. When Trump was president, he bombed the Syrian airbase with Russian troops on the airbase. Remember that? And by the way, Xi Jinping, the premier, the Chinese leader, was at Mar-a-Lago having baked Alaska in his dessert at the time of us bombing Syria. That's balls, folks. That's balls. And the point is this. These rebels, whoever these rebels are, they're probably bad people too. But what they did is they realized Trump's coming in, and whoever is going to be in power when Trump comes in, they're going to be ones negotiating with Trump. So that's why Bashar al-Assad got bounced by his terrorist resistance, let's call it that. So the point is, Trump's in town. There's a new sheriff, a global sheriff, and no one really knows how to deal with them. Also, again, international foreign policy. Take a look at some of the things that we're going to show you right here. Trump was in Paris for the reopening of the Notre Dame Cathedral, which burned down a couple of years ago. And Trump and Jill was there. Look at that look that Jill is giving Trump. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but you know, Trump was with Macron and his wife. It's clear that the world realizes, look at that handshake. First of all, Macron's hand is probably broken. Folks, if you're listening on the podcast, you can't see Trump and Macron kind of embrace, but Macron puts his hand out to shake Trump's hand, and Trump grabs it and like squeezes the living daylights out of it. And Macron's a little guy and Trump's a big guy. I'm sure Macron walked away and his hand is like aching, but Macron, his wife, this respect that was shown to Trump. Trump meets Zelensky. Trump meets Meloni from Italy. All these people realize that the power that Trump has been given, not just because he won an election in 2016, but the power that he's been given, the way he won in 2024, the way he won with this massive U.S. mandate, which means the full power, force of the U.S. government and people are behind Trump right now. No one's going to mess with that. Not one of those people are going to mess with that. Maloney, nope. Zelensky will probably say, thank you very much, America. We bled you dry best we can. We're going to walk away. Macron better get in line, too. Better get his ass together. And I will tell you, Iran is going to be the biggest loser with Syria going down because Iran has to export oil. They can still hit the Strait of Hormuz on one end, but on the other side, Iran was using Syria to get oil into the Med to ship it to parts of Europe. That's going to close down now. I'm sure Trump's going to say, screw you, Iran, screw you. So the biggest losers in this whole little ball of international mystery and intrigue right now, the Iranian mullahs who've had nothing but a shit year. They lost the leader, the guy who replaced them, the guy who came over who was running Hezbollah, got assassinated by Israel. Israel the winner, America the winner, Iran. Clear losers here on the international stage. Truthbound Bolling. All right, we have a serious and ongoing problem, as I just mentioned, and this is what shitty foreign policy creates. Just as weakness begets war, oftentimes America's meddling in foreign conflicts creates more problems. For us, we tend to destabilize and create room for terrorists. And I'm talking about when liberals are in charge or rhinos are in charge, establishment Republicans like George Bush. Same thing, same animal, different stripes, clearly. A far bigger problem to deal with, both for our greatest Mideast allies, Israel, but also for American lives abroad and even at home. Think Afghanistan, think Iraq, and now think Syria. Boy, did Obama and Hillary F this one up. January 20th can't come fast enough. Over the next few days, pay close attention to how the legacy media, the old school media, talks about this story, because what tells us a very different story than the truth. They will get to something completely different, so we'll get into it right now. We live in a different world now. If you take just the last 4 years alone as a case study, it's fair to say and safe to assume that much of what the legacy media, propaganda, legacy, corporate media has been peddling, well, it's loaded with propaganda. Loaded with propaganda, if not outright lies too. We have to question everything they tell us, because it goes through a corporate boardroom, it goes through an advertising boardroom. Make sure everyone's cool with this. Is the boss okay with this? Are advertisers okay? Oh, they're not good? Okay, let's tweak it. Boss is not okay with that. Let's figure it out. And they serve you up bullshit. They serve you up garbage. Has nothing to do with the truth. As we watch what's unfolding and continues to unfold in Syria, here's the story they're telling us, the one they want us to think is true. They want us to hear this. They want to blanket us with this. And of course, there's the real story and the real truth. Let's have to assume there's some hidden agenda in what's being reported always and how it's being discussed, because as we've discovered, there almost always is a hidden agenda. America doesn't seem to learn our lessons when there's a Democrat or an establishment rhino up top. Vietnam, error. Afghanistan, major error. Iraq, Afghanistan, Volume 2, the withdrawal. The deep state and the government they control, like their very own puppets, are acting on behalf of the most sinister of interests. And who and what gets hurt in the end? Well, America and Americans do. Our men and women in uniform. And by the way, we're financing all this shit with our tax dollars. And the story of Syria, it's a perfect case in point. First of all, I want to tip my hat to Elon Musk again, because can you imagine how we would even be learning about these events if it weren't for the X platform? We'd only be hearing about these events through the propaganda-filled lens of the leftist media machine. People like Walter Cronkite, distant memory, and a far cry from these so-called journalists at MSNBC, CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, and to a certain extent, even Fox. I'm sorry, even Fox. You get the watered-down version. You get the corporate boardroom cleared, the advertiser cleared version. Not here, though. We don't answer anybody. We say it like it is. All right, let's do the facts, shall we? The events of the past week have been stunning. To behold a sudden end to the regime of President Bashar al-Assad, more than a decade after he managed to hold on while a civil war erupted in his own country. Rebels led by the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham terrorist group, worked quickly through the country of Syria. They seized Aleppo, Hamas, Homs, and then finally entered the capital city of Damascus on yesterday. And Assad, well, he fled the country to Russia, where he and his family, his British wife, they left. They have asylum in Russia, but they left with a $38 million apartment as well as $1.3 billion that they sent over to Russia before he was deposed. Assad will be just fine. Now, before Damascus developments, the U.S. had mostly stayed on the sidelines. At least we thought so. The Biden administration issued very limp statements urging a democratic election for the future of the nation and the dismantling of its infamous chemical weapons facilities. Chemical weapons that Assad used on his own people to keep them under control. Sound familiar? And Joe stumbled out of his cupcake-eating slumber to say some things on Sunday. Listen.
Over the past 4 years, my administration pursued a clear and principled policy towards Syria. First, we made clear from the start sanction on Assad would remain in place unless he engaged seriously in a political process to end the civil war, as outlined by the UN Security Council resolution passed in 2015. But Assad refused. So we carried out a comprehensive sanction program.
Oh, goodness gracious. To repeat a great Trump line from the Biden-Trump debate back in June when Trump said, I don't know what he just said. I don't think he knows what he just said. So on the surface, at least, it would appear the U.S. government doesn't have much of a stomach for involvement in Syria at this point, a distaste that is residual from the botched weapons distribution and empty threats attached to the legacy of Barack Obama's administration and Obama's failure to get a proper handle on the situation in the first place. What we've seen going down in history is the result of, let's call it failed foreign policy or weak, feckless foreign policy of Barack Obama and his vice president, Joe Biden. Biden, who is senator, sat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee for decades, was clearly a seasoned deep state operative, and his pro-Barack Obama was much the same. Obama had a history of appeasing Iran, and we saw that continue into his third presidency with Joe Biden at the helm. And America refuses to learn our lessons over and over and over again. We continue to get involved in these foreign conflicts in the name of shady foreign interests, which repeatedly creates more problems for us. Here's some of the history behind what's going on in Syria. Before the ISIS jihadists took over Syria, yes, that's where they come from. It was once a movement of hundreds of thousands of regular Syrians, civilians, vendors, doctors, and such, demonstrating and even fighting to free their country from the dictatorship of Bashar al-Assad. But Barack Obama and the West abandoned them, and then Bashar al-Assad and Hezbollah slaughtered them. Obama, who perfected the art of being weak in the face of global tyrants, said he was okay with the slaughter and did nothing and said nothing for years because he wanted to appease who? Their buddy in Iran. And so what happened is a story that has repeated now several times over the past several decades. A vacuum is filled by extremists and even, in this case, terrorists. It's worth recalling Barack Obama's role in keeping Assad in power. As I mentioned, he refused to support the opposition in any important way, and then he refused to enforce his own red line against Assad's use of sarin and chlorine gas to kill his own people. Incredibly, Obama invited Russia to help end the civil war, and Putin obliged by joining with Iran to prop up Assad, elbowing the U.S. out and Obama out and Joe out, and establishing an air base and a long-desired naval base on the Mediterranean. And now Russia and Russia State Television is trolling Democrats over the fall of Syria. Listen to this.
Assad needs to go.
It's time for Assad to get out of the way.
Assad has to go.
The future of Syria can't include Assad.
The world will not waver. Assad must go.
The only way that the civil war will end is a new government without Bashar Assad.
So you know what all that was? You know what the common thread between all that was? It was Democrats were fake Republicans, rhinos. Democrats and rhinos. Assad must go. Trump is the one who bombed Syrian airbase. Trump's the only one who did anything about it. You see how terrible, weak, feckless foreign policy works to embolden your adversaries? It's well known. It's a well-known Democrat legacy, in fact, but definitely an Obama legacy carried forward with gusto by Sir Naps-a-Lot. So Obama's misjudgment helped Iran expand its axis of resistance from Tehran, Iran, to Beirut. And it also reversed the strategic triumph achieved by Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger in the 70s, minimizing the Soviet Union's influence in the Middle East. Well done, Obama. Gave that all right back to him, didn't you? And like Obama, Biden's Middle East priority has been appeasing Iran. Funny how both Obama and Biden sent billions of dollars to Iran, the first thing they did when they got into office. They filled their coffers, the Iranian coffers, allowing them to get closer to that nuclear weapon and to fund terrorism. In Biden's own weakness, well, that culminated in that October 7th massacre 2023 by Hamas. What we've seen over the last 14 months, the Hamas slaughter in Israel, a war with Hezbollah by Israel, slaughter across the Mideast, a nuclear Iran, Houthis, and now ISIS taking over Syria. Never forget who made all that happen.
Obama decided, together with Hillary Clinton, that they would overthrow the Syrian president, Bashar al-Assad. And the president made what's called a finding, presidential finding, and he ordered the CIA to train and arm jihadists, basically, to overthrow Bashar al-Assad. And they did that, but they didn't succeed, as in many cases, they failed. That's how Syria got into such a prolonged chaos. And then what happened, by the way, which is par for the course, after several years, Russia came in on the side of Assad. And when Russia came in, we attacked Russia for meddling in the internal affairs of Syria. So it's called gaslighting.
See what I mean? This is what we mean about being armed with the truth, being armed with information. And we, the American tax-paying citizens, deserve that much. These Syrian rebels, read terrorists, didn't come out of nowhere and finally successfully remove Assad's government miraculously before the end of the Biden administration. Again, remember, there are zero coincidences in this world of power and politics. If ever we needed even more certainty that we are, in fact, living through a third Obama presidency, this is it. Yet more glaring proof. What we're seeing is Barack Obama trying to finish what he started before Donald Trump takes over the White House. President Trump rightly believed that America shouldn't get involved in complicated conflicts. This is not our fight, he says, but he repeats what we're saying. And he's absolutely right. When the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan way back in 1979, America, well, we were so blinded by the Cold War that our country felt the need to arm the rebels fighting against the Soviet Union. The arms and the weapons we provided, those fighters were empowered. Well, they go become the Taliban. Though we trained and armed the Taliban in the 80s. Our men and women who fought in Afghanistan less than 2 decades later would be fighting against the very same weapons we provided. If just that one example isn't enough to convince us of the perils of getting involved in international conflicts, I don't know what is. You see, President Trump understood the perils of getting involved in foreign conflicts, particularly ones that involve terrorists and, well, other terrorists.
So Taliban is our enemy. ISIS is our enemy. We have an area that I brought up with our generals 4 or 5 weeks ago where Taliban is here, ISIS is here, and they're fighting each other. I said, why don't you let them fight? Why are we getting in the middle of it? I said, let them fight. They're both our enemies. Let them fight. Sir, we want to do it. They go in and they end up fighting both of them. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen.
You know, sometimes simplifying it down to its most basic logic terms is 100% accurate. And Trump right there just nailed it. They're both our adversaries. Let them fight. Let them fight. Let them beat the shit out of each other. Wipe each other out. And what's more, Trump apparently fought back against the CIA in its attempt to meddle in foreign affairs. Here's Julian Assange explaining so back in 2017. Listen.
Be aware, but there is a serious conflict between say, Donald Trump, one of his strategic advisors, Steve Bannon, and other people around them, and the Central Intelligence Agency and some of the other U.S. security agencies. Quite a serious conflict where they are pushing to preserve their power,
right,
and make the president, not change their policies that they want to keep. What's a prime example of that? I think it is the leading cause of this conflict. It is a policy on Syria.
Right.
The budgetary spend, the number one project of the CIA has been the overthrow of the government of Bashar al-Assad, measured by the amount of their budget that they're spending. So they spend more of their budget on that than anything else.
Yeah, Sanj pointing out right there. Trump is fighting one war. The outsiders wanted him to fight another war, a different war completely. And Bannon was always a great advisor to Trump. By the way, I'll be on Bannon's show tomorrow morning, War Room, or tomorrow, top of the show. More of their budget on that than anything else. Think about that. So you see, it's very complicated. This is how complicated it is, in fact. Here's a tweet coming out of the U.S. Embassy in Syria 7 years ago in 2017. That image, that reward poster is looking for none other than the very head of the rebellion against Assad. From terrorist to Syrian rebel, I suppose we have the CIA to thank for that rebranding. Once a terrorist, but now no longer. How can you really ever kick those pesky terrorist ways? Why do Democrats insist on trusting the future of America with terrorists? This reminds me of when we had the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. And the Biden administration kept claiming that they believed the Taliban when they said they wouldn't resort to their own ways. And you know what? That's actually true. They got worse after America withdrew from their country, leaving $80 billion of assets behind. Also reminds me of the moment the Biden administration swore that the billions in sanctions they were relieving Iran of would definitely not be spent to carry out terrorism. Remember, one of his first acts, Biden relieved Iran of the sanctions that Trump put on. One of the first acts. It's their money, they said. It's their money. Let them go. They're not going to support terrorism. Well, then immediately after, Iran started funding terrorism through their proxies in the Middle East. Got it. No coincidences. We've been saying this. We don't know yet everything there is to know about what went down in Syria, but something doesn't sit right. It feels a lot like Joe Biden is trying to help cover Barack Obama's tracks. It also feels like they're trying so hard to destabilize the region ahead of Trump's next presidency, but it's going to happen to work the other way. Either way, one thing is for sure. We can't get rid of Joe Biden fast enough.
With a new constitution, a new government that serves all Syrians. And this process will be determined by the Syrian people themselves. And the United States will do whatever we can to support them, including through humanitarian relief to help restore Syria after more than a decade of war and generations of brutality by this family.
Go suck a duck, Joe. Are you freaking kidding me? You're going to give the Syrian people humanitarian aid. Didn't you give Hamas, people in Gaza, humanitarian aid, knowing that it was going right to Hamas? You freaking idiot. Go home. Go retire. Go eat ice cream. Go watch Golden Girls on TV. Two things can be true at once. Number one, that the downfall of the Assad regime is great for America and Israel, but also very, very bad news for Iran and Russia. That's a good thing. But this is also true. Syria is unstable. That makes the region more unstable too. And history has shown us time and time again that this is something to be concerned about. We need to get Barack Obama and Joe Biden out of the White House and out of our freaking foreign policy. They've done enough damage to last us for a very long time. If not for them, this is a problem that could have been solved a long time ago. Now, before we go, we showed you that picture of Dr. Jill Biden in Paris, staring at Trump almost longingly, like she wished she was with him instead of Joe. Well, Trump used that picture. This is how brilliant this guy is in marketing. Trump releases the new cologne. It's a new cologne, and he uses the picture of Jill staring at him as a part of a sales pitch, saying makes you unbelievably attractive to other people. Trump, you can't make it up, folks. That's actually legit. I thought it was fake when I saw it. I'm pretty sure it's legit. If I'm wrong, don't crucify. Text me, email me if I'm wrong, or leave a comment at the bottom of the show that you're watching or listening to. Don't forget, share the show with everyone. We want you to join us. We're growing. By the way, we're up 205% second month versus first month. We've been on TV and been on digital and podcasts for 2 months. From the month one to the month two, we're up 205%. We want to keep that going. We can only keep it going if you subscribe and you share our ideas. Word of mouth means everything in the biz. Appreciate you. Love you. Monday, things are heating up, folks. Getting close to that inauguration. The world is on fire. We'll keep you informed and in the know with the right opinion, with the truth, folks. Bolling out.